Well, hi there. I'm Mike Creavey for Homeschool Connections, and with me today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Henry Russell. Henry, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk about HSC and literature.
Yes, yeah, and this is exciting. I've gotten to speak to a couple folks this summer in these interviews and all sorts of different, bailiwicks. It's just always amazing
Right.
to see how many different, folks we bring to the table here at Homeschool Connections. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about your own background and what brought you to Homeschool Connections?
Well, all right. When I was younger, it seemed to me there were two great avocations in life. One was to be an astronaut, and one was to be a poet. So my glasses kind of put me out of the astronaut business.
Sure.
So I pursued poetry for years and eventually became the associate editor of The Formalist with my good friend Bill Baer, who's a
Mhm.
fine modern Catholic author. And all that time, my earnest conception was never a professor, never a teacher, really.
Mhm.
So God apparently had his own plans and was somewhat amused at my point of view about this. I've taught now for about 40 years,
Okay.
mostly at Catholic institutions like Franciscan University or Ave
Sure.
Maria College or Sacred Heart Seminary in Detroit here. But my wife and I, um, almost 20 years ago, formed something called St. Augustine's Classical Catholic Liberal Arts Program.
Hmm.
And Mrs. Whitman's children were part of that. So when
Oh,
she
okay.
and Mr. Crawford got together and decided to give birth to Homeschool Connections, she brought me aboard pretty quickly. I don't know whether I was the second or third or whatever, but I've
Mhm.
been with Homeschool Connections for quite a long time now. And
Yeah.
it's been a wonderful experience. I had never taught computer classes before, but I
Okay.
was fascinated by the idea of the reach that
Sure.
Homeschool Connections would be creating, and it's always good.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, just looking at, I've got the list right here. If folks go, of course, to your instructor page, which some of them may be seeing this video, at the top of that page already. We've got Homer, we've got King Arthur, we've got Shakespeare, Chesterton, Tolkien.
It's
What
true.
I guess I could just ask. I mean, there's too many courses on there to go through one by one. But I mean, is
True.
what really gets your or I suppose I could ask it. What gets you so passionate about literature? What are you trying to sort of instill in your students or hope that they will be able to see that you've seen?
No, that's good. Literature is a tradition, right? It is a connected and growing story. If you don't know your ancestors, you're going to be at a real disadvantage
Yeah,
in
sure.
trying to create literature. One great author grows out of the whole tree,
Hmm.
going back to Holy Scriptures, and then in more simply Homer and thereafter. So it helps to know as much as possible about the whole thing,
Hmm.
and that's been one of my goals over the decades. But I think what my courses are focused on is helping students grasp, especially the great theology, the philosophy, the the history that lies behind a great work,
Hmm.
because these are the best thoughts of mankind. We've kept them alive, through persecutions, through revolutions, through so many disasters, and there's good reason because they are the important thoughts.
Hmm.
So my goal is to get at what the author was thinking as much as possible, and what he or she was trying to teach us, not what some modern atheist wants to
Right.
teach us or some director who thinks it's really clever to put everybody in 1950s clothes in Hamlet. I mean, that's,
Right.
you know, uh, well, that brings me to one of my favorite authors, of course, and whom I have been exploring in the Catholic Shakespeare
Hmm.
for in one way or another for almost 40 years now.
Right.
And there's no serious way of understanding Shakespeare
Hmm.
unless you see him in the middle of this titanic struggle to help his fellow English Catholics hold on to faith and hope, and sometimes charity, and sometimes not so much, in the middle of these persecutions.
Sure.
So that's enormous fun to
Yeah.
help students see this, and thus really come to love Shakespeare for who he is.
Hmm.
And it's funny. An author, a very modern author like Tolkien, is somewhat similar. In the 1930s, he already knew that the academy and just people in general were getting gun shy about the truths of Christianity. And so he
Hmm.
kind of kept his cards a little close to his vest.
Hmm.
Um, and so he didn't even mention religion directly in the great books.
Right.
But it's always there. It's always the structure of what he's building, because Aristotle tells us we build from reality,
Right.
and the ultimate reality is the Catholic faith. So it's great fun to teach him
Yes.
and any other of the Inklings,
Sure.
and partly because he's heroic. I love the
Right.
heroic tradition, right? Whether it's the Greek and Roman heroes, or whether it's medieval heroes like Beowulf or
Hmm.
Roland,
Yeah.
or King Arthur, or the Cid,
Yeah.
because we need heroes. We need to become
Yes.
heroes all over again. God help us,
Amen.
because we're not very well prepared for it.
I think we need I would certainly, put my vote in for the fact that we need more real heroes, right? Than flashy superheroes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
We have
Isn't it
plenty of
horrible
those,
how
you know?
we substitute these
Yeah.
flashy and really
Yeah.
pathetic
Right.
superheroes for true heroism?
Sure. Yes.
But it's at least it's sort of a tap on people's shoulders.
Hmm.
So you give them the corrupt heroes of Marvel, and then perhaps they'll find their way to the real Catholic
Sure.
heroes of the
Well, and
world.
these perennial things that we don't have time to get into all of them, but I was just thinking the if my memory's a little fuzzy, but is it Lady Macbeth who's constantly washing her hands, right? Because she
Yes.
sees the blood that's not there. But I mean Shakespeare's the depth of his psychology too. The interplay of the way that sin works and the effects on the soul. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
right.
there's nothing quite like it. And it's
Lady
perennial, right? It's
Macbeth makes a
perennial.
very simple mistake. I
Hmm.
mean, her hands could have been cleansed, but not
Hmm.
by just water. It has to be holy
Right.
water. It has to be
Yes.
confession. And
Right.
and all could have been well in many
Hmm.
ways. But she
Yeah.
refuses it. And so does
Yeah.
Macbeth. And so he ends up, on the side of Satan.
Right.
Well, it was a servant literally called Satan,
Hmm.
who is basically running his life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean Shakespeare understands everything about human psychology, but he understands it because he understands the faith and what it teaches us about
Sure.
who we are.
Do you find an opportunity here in these classes for students to, I mean, in just the sheer fact that you're exposing them to such a wide array of literature from such a huge, period of time
Yeah, yeah,
across all these different cultures, right? I mean, Greek culture, 1200 plus years, whatever the story of Troy, of course, or 1200 years before Christ, is very
right.
different from ours. Yet you have these again perennial issues of human life. Do you find that something that the students they really resonate or that resonates with them?
Oh yeah, I mean
Hmm.
they see themselves,
Yeah, it's
and
like a mirror, right?
mhm.
Wow.
And it's a mirror, you know, greater than they're usually used to seeing themselves in.
Sure.
Right? What the modern world reflects back to them is pretty thin and
Hmm.
pathetic. But what these great books reflect back to them that begins to get closer to their hearts.
Sure. Sure.
And that's what literature is for, to
Cool.
teach us who we are when we
Yeah.
have forgotten.
Well, we only have a few minutes here for these little intro videos just to get people, sort of wet their whistle. I mean, I always want
Mhm.
to sign up for everything myself after I chat with folks. So if is there anything else you just want to share as far as how parents or students could learn more, where to find out more, any advice for them, looking at different courses you offer, what they should consider?
Well, part of it is they should be, thinking about what is the structure of the education they want to give
Hmm.
their children. And, there is an order to the great books, and it's best to take them in order if you possibly can.
Hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, this fall I'm teaching a course that is called the Epic and the Person, or the Human Person. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm teaching it both for Homeschool Connections and Franciscan University. It's the kind of course where you can get college credit for taking it if you do,
Sure.
certain things that are laid out on the website, or if you're having trouble, just call somebody in the
Sure.
organization to tell you how. But that kind of a course, we are starting with the Iliad and the Odyssey, and moving on up through Virgil's Aeneid, and then the great Confessions of
Mm-hmm.
Saint Augustine, and up to Dante. That's for a whole year. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
two
Sure.
semesters. We're not doing all that in a few months. And it's a good way to begin to put in some of the groundwork. But of course, another thing is students must be reading the Bible
Mm-hmm.
with somebody who can help
Absolutely.
them.
Sure.
The Bible is the ultimate source of knowledge for the Western world, and particularly for um, literature.
Mm-hmm.
Once Constantine has helped us get out from under the persecutions for a little while.
Sure.
So these are important things, just to really look at the structure of an education, and take courses that kind of move you along. You don't have to get all the way through by the time you're
Mm-hmm.
in high school. Just go to a very good, faithful Catholic college,
Yeah.
and really
Yeah.
get an education. Um,
Wonderful.
so yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess that's what I would say
Yes. Well,
for learning how to navigate a little bit more.
wonderful. Well, Dr. Russell, thank you so much for stopping by here a little bit today and just sharing about your homeschool connection courses, and hopefully people will sign up in droves. So
I hope
thank you
so.
very much.
All
All
right.
right. God
Thank you.
bless you.
God bless.
Take
Bye.
care.